know Malcolm X's birthday is tomorrow, right?
Sunday.
Is it the 19th? It's the 19th. Okay, thank you, brother, for correcting me. So this brother's going to highlight everything, but please remember this last thing. Professor James Small. Hear ye.
Thank you, brother.
Love you, brother.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings. Now, this year will be the 59th year that we pay tribute to Malcolm's spirit. And to you, my great father, brother, teacher, we know there can be no Malcolm spirit without the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's spirit. So I've always, even I was the imam of Muslim Mosque Inc. after Malcolm's assassination for 18 years. So I got the opportunity to try to teach both tracks. Now I'm kind of like the invisible man, because most people didn't know I was a Muslim, but during that period of time. Coming after Tony is the most impossible thing anyone could do to any human being, so I left my folder of notes on the chair, okay? That was extraordinary, Tony. That was an extraordinary presentation. So I want to see what the Spirit is going to ask of me to give to you concerning reparations. But I just want to tell you a couple of things. I just returned from Ghana last week. Some people may have heard that someone, Tony wiped them out. I don't really need them. Someone put a bar and a restaurant in the Elmina slave dungeon. So I wrote a petition and circulated around the world to the presidents. We did a few other things. We put some heat on the government. And so I went over to Ghana to meet with the ministry and to meet with some of the parliamentary people to say, undo this, or we're going to come and undo this, and that's not going to be good for you. So they asked us to give them some time, and today I did get a call. They feel they've found a resolution to the situation, and on Monday the government will announce that resolution. Second thing, because Tony laid out so much, and some of this is going to be for our father, America, when I was about 21, I was taking this beautiful young girl, Georgette Miller, to the prom, her prom. But I had no money. 21 in those days, you broke, right? So there was two brothers who always sat in the car in front of our stoop in Harlem, and they were always very courteous to the young guys. So they says, aren't you taking Doll Baby to the prom? I said, yes, sir, but I ain't got no money for no tuxedo. They said, get in the car. So I got in the car, they drove me to the Bronx, and they rented me a tuxedo and some patent leather shoes, and I was looking good, cummerbund, the whole nine. And I found out the two brothers were Prince Hall Masons. See, there's something we miss, even I missed it early on, about what we built in America that we didn't know that we built. But what happened, I was a Muslim, but they didn't know that, because I was like a well-kept little secret. As Imam, I became Hajj Amin Ash-Shahid. I went to Mecca around 74, that time period. But the men saw me about 3 weeks later and wanted to make sure that I take the tuxedo back, that I take the shoes back, that I did all the things to make sure their money wasn't wasted. And I told them I did. Then I said, I got something beautiful to tell you. I'm going to Mecca. And these men had adored me, loved me, kind to me, and they got hostile. Very hostile. Not for the reason you may think. I had the wrong reason why they got hostile. And they said, get away from me. And I go like, why? Y'all were like my uncles, right? They said, why would you leave Mecca to go to Mecca? So I didn't understand that. So I went to Sister Ella, Malcolm's sister. I said, Sister Ella, why did these brothers treat me that way? And why did they say I was leaving Mecca to go to Mecca? We're talking about reparations. The Human Rights Charter of the United Nations talk about Culture being denied is a human rights violation. Language, indigeneity, being denied is a human rights violation. Religion, indigeneity, is a human rights violation. The history of a people being taught to a people, if you violate the opportunity, you violated their human rights. All of those things are worthy of reparations and have been given to different people across the world in reparations over this last century, on one level or another. So we have to understand what has occurred here in this place called America. This is Egypt. The man was telling me, we don't need Saudi Arabia anymore because what Mecca represented then has been built in the U.S. now. You'll understand that. They're serious. This is no joke. They came here to do this. I've stood on the square, Cornerstone 37, Prince Hall, Grand Lodge, State of New York. I have a better tongue than most because I'm also the priest of the craft of Amun-Ra. The priest of the craft of Amun-Ra. I had the opportunity yesterday to be in Houston before that storm hit, and the ancestors got me out just in time, about an hour ahead of it. But I went to perform the opening of the mouth ceremony for the Grand Master of the Shrine of Hunefa. There's a lot that exists among us that we're not aware of. Africans in America, yes. The Europeans damage our consciousness. Consciousness is the ability to restore yourself, rebuild yourself, and reconstruct yourself. Well, you can't do that unless you have access to your memory. Your memory is your history. Your history is your ancestral experiences. And when they blocked us off from our ancestral experiences, that was one of the greatest crimes they ever committed against us. And it is listed in the UN as a crime against humanity. If we're going to get the verdict that we want, that would bring about the enforcement necessary to be paid and to be compensated for all of the crimes that have been committed against us. But what I want you to understand is that we did not die in America. Some of us died in America. But all of us did not die in America. Okay? When we see the obelisk that Brother Tony was showing that we call the Washington Monument, it was not coincidental that they put it there. Driving around Washington and seeing the replication of all of these buildings from ancient Africa, it's not coincidental. They wanted to replicate us, and they've done a pretty darn good job of it. But here's what you miss, and some of them missed. The replication of these physical symbols of the quality and attributes of the character of the African. Let me say that one again. I want y'all to miss the last sentence now because the last sentence is important. Those buildings represents the quality and the attributes of the character of the African. That he does not have the capacity to contain. That's why he keeps us here. We are the light of their world. That's why he keeps us here. He wants to minimize our ability to control power. But you can't have an America without us because we are the source of the power in America. And I want you to really get it, you know, because sometimes we don't really get it. We don't really understand. If you made a list of 200 of the greatest inventions in North America, I guarantee you 75% would be African Americans. But we don't think of them when we stack them all together. We think of the light bulb, we think of the train track, we think of the elevator, we think of, you know, a few things that we do every Black History Month. But line up 100 and see how many was our contribution. Okay? America, when it was founded, was an agricultural society, right? They didn't have an agricultural society in Europe. They didn't go to get us for labor. They went to get us for agricultural knowledge. they had come across all this land. They had gotten as much gold as they could get after a while. They needed us for that too, but primarily this became an agricultural world. And we were the world's agricultural specialists in all fields. That's why we were brought here. Two young girls the other day, they said, young African American sisters, they said they solved the Pythagorean theorem. Well, first of all, Pythagorean didn't have a theorem, because pi is already reached when we completed the pyramid, off by an almost unmeasurable milliliter, and Pythagoras' great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather wasn't born yet. And so we know in the Rhine Mathematic Papyrus, I think it's problem 16, you can see that worked out. But what those young ladies did was, and they said, well, we didn't do nothing. We just simply made smaller triangles, smaller right triangles, and smaller. What they did was what education should do for us. There's a reason why people want to control our schools, and there's a reason why people want to control your history. Again, just what has happened to the public school system against the African mind is your case for reparations, right? Because the word education itself means to do what? Bring something inside of you out. The very root of the word means to bring something in, out. So you don't go to school to get education, you go to school to get tools to bring the thing inside of you out. The same 7 liberal arts they use in schools today and won't teach to us is the same 7 liberal arts you'll read about in Stolen Legacy that was used to build Kemet. There is something inside of you that these tools, when appropriately applied to your consciousness, allow you to bring out of yourself. Before I started saying we're God having a human experience, the Nation of Islam was saying we were gods. Am I right, sir? Okay. Before the 5% nation under Brother Clarence was saying we gods, the Nation of Islam was saying before Clarence left the nation, we were gods. And it took me a long time to get that one. That we indeed are the universe itself. See, there's nothing on the back of my shirt. Jinyami. Naninyami. Nothing exists but God. What are we? Expressions of aspects of that existence. Listen to me, Paul, because I'm not getting away from reparations. It's time to give you something. We are expressions of aspects of the essence of that existence, which means each of us contain the totality of the God's possibilities. They took that away from us. They took our access to that understanding away from us by denying us the tool to extract what comes in us from the universe itself. And that's about this war. Yes, sir. So, we at war. Reparations is one of the tools we need to win the war. And when we make this case, as our great attorney, Queen Mother, was making for us, I mean, that's just extraordinary what y'all went when y'all went to Geneva. I had not heard that before, and I'm sitting there going like, we thought we did something. Y'all was like super revolutionaries. And I'm like, oh my God. And our children need to know those stories. They need to know what you did. They need to understand the work that has been done, because a lot of people think reparations is something new. We're just starting it, and they're not studying the work that's already been done. The greatest crime that was committed against the African is to take away the African's memories. Now, they didn't take away all of our memories. A lot of us still got memory. But we're not individuals. The African is a body. When the great light wanted to express itself in the world, it doesn't express itself as the great light. We use the sun as a symbol. The sun don't come down, it'll burn us up. So what does it do? It's in tiny little pieces of itself we call sun rays. But each of them contain the totality of the great light. But somebody block you from understanding that, taking that knowledge of replication. How do I recreate myself? Tony was saying that in our culture, there's no such thing as death, and there isn't. We are simply replication. When I gave birth to my, how many children? 8 children. I gave birth to myself. When my mama and dad gave birth to me, they gave birth to themselves. When grandma and great-grandma and great gave birth to them, they gave birth to themselves. We are always a total existence. We are never not existing. But he took away the knowledge of your understanding how you are a total existence. When a woman and a man mate and they produce a child, because God don't drop babies out of the sky, right? It doesn't grow up out of the ground and you go in there and you pick it like you pick some collard greens. No, you are that aspect of God that creates. That's the only way God creates. But to have the knowledge of who you are, see, that's where the nation comes in, but you know that better than me. We've missed the boat. Even when I was young, I missed the boat on the nation. Of course, I couldn't come in at the point I was because I went over with Malcolm. But I did keep an alliance with so many of the brothers. This thing of the lost knowledge, this thing of the mind, to understand what the white man did to us. He blocked you from an understanding of yourself as a God having experience that we call the human being. Not to make you reign over anything. You don't have to, because you already reign over everything if you were conscious of the fact that you were doing that or should be doing that. African culture is not just wearing kente cloth, dancing to some beautiful drum and music. African culture is what allows the earth, what allows the cosmos, what allows the ecology to stay in harmony. Yesterday when I was leaving Houston, we went to that cemetery and he buried Brother Jarvis. And it started raining as we were leaving the cemetery. So somebody said, Brother Small, are you coming back to the repast? And I said, I'm coming to the repast. So we drove to the repast and the ancestor said, you go to the airport. And I listened to them. I said, I'm not coming inside. I'm going to go to the airport a little early. Got to the airport, got on the plane. They wouldn't let us leave. They held us for 2 hours because this crazy storm came through. But when you saw what it did to Houston this morning, about 2 tornadoes followed the storm. Now I figured Jarvis probably was angry about something we didn't. He just tore up the whole city to make himself happy. But imagine having the ability to control energy without splitting the atom. I hope y'all understand. Y'all don't quite understand where I'm going, right? That's kind of like out there someplace. I'm matter and I'm energy. If I could collect all of the energy that is me and blow up myself, I'd be a nuclear explosion. To build a robot that can do everything that my body could do with all the cells in my body do it with and replicate those cells every day, you'd need a nuclear power plant. But the sun is our nuclear power plant. The energy we get from the food is that nuclear power plant. Because we're nothing but mud and fire, right? Every bit of food you eat come out of the dirt, right? And it absorbed, whatever seed you put down, it absorbed the minerals of the dirt. So you're dirt, and then you absorb all this energy of the sun, so your energy, but you're getting energy from Mars and Jupiter and every place else. We are the universe. We built all that stuff in Kemet not to have something pretty to look at. Those were tools that teach us concepts, ideas, and principles of how to live life in harmony and balance with cosmology and ecology and one another, so there was no war, murder, death, lying, stealing, and destruction that's going on in society. That they cannot replicate. They can replicate the symbols of those things, but they need us to keep America from falling apart at the seams. Every decent law in this country that we can call human rights law of worth, we fought to put it on the books, not them. They don't have the capacity to contain and retain what's necessary to make a civil society. So when we go to war, and I'm going to close with this, and we take our case for reparations, the case that make it clear that history allows you to erase the mystery. Dr. Hilliard, one of Tony's great teachers and mine, said, the greatest freedom anyone can know, and Mother was talking about identity, is to be shackled knowingly to your identity. The greatest freedom that anyone that can know is to be shackled knowingly to your identity, and he's chopped that chain and unshackled us from our identity. That's why Afro descendants, at first I was kind of like, I want to throw African in there, but I listened to it after the last conference real well, right? And I go like, that makes sense. Because it includes all of us as we are scattered all around. Our identity isn't just the language we speak. Because remember, every language is like a ship, right? It carries the information of that group of people for that time period that were in that location, functioning in that way. See, I would have a contention, I wouldn't contend with Tony because I love Tony too much, but I'm the eldest, so I can contend a little bit. That we went from West Africa to East Africa and built Kemet. And when the invaders came, we returned to the ancestral lands and went back to West Africa and rebuilt new civilizations again. And so when we were brought here to this country, and I'll conclude it with this, because we don't think of it deeply, and when we try to think of brothers like Prince Hall and Richard Allen and Martin King and Adam Clayton Powell and David Walker and realize, oh my God, all those brothers were Prince Hall Masons. What's with that? What was that all about? What body of knowledge that they understood that allowed them to tell the White Lodge in America, I can show you a charter, can you show me one? And no White Lodge in America can show a charter from the Grand Lodge of England, none. They have been, the Lodge from England set up their lodge, but they can't stand on that. And even if they could, 33 is just walking in the door. Yes, you can't reach 360 until you're laying prone, but you get there at the day you say goodbye and say, I got to transition and come back again. I put this out there for some who hear me. Do you hear me, those who hear me? Okay? Because we built America. It was never the church itself that was the great force. It was those societies of secrets that African men and women had who ran the church that made it a great force. And those societies never died when they drove us out of Kemet. Every African society retains societies of secret for the men and societies of secrets for the women. And a lot of times, I remember when Sister was speaking, and I remember somebody come up and talk about the power of our women. In African culture, in every phase of culture, in every part of our known history, the woman is the power. She gives authority to the men. Hear that well. The woman is the power. She gives the authority to the men. That's what that statue where you see of Isis sitting there with Horus sitting on her lap. But remember, also on her head is what? The throne. She is the throne that the male sits upon. And this is practiced in most African society today. You don't find your leader through the male. A few cultures do that, but most trace their leadership through the female, what they call matrifocal. Okay? The women decides who leads these countries. She's the power. She gives us the authority. And because the white man knows that, he's cut off our access from the body knowledge, from the history, from the culture, from the spiritual system, from the sacred science institution that's supposed to protect the spiritual system. And so we can't build the next step, the economic, politics, and cultural institutions that will protect the body people. And if you don't have a consciousness rooted in your own histology, your own spirituality, around your own rituals, around your own race in terms of your projection, around your own ethos, around your own philosophy, then you've got somebody else's that you're spreading. And everybody else's is for your demise. So I love the Divine Nine, and I know some of the Divine Nine is in the room tonight because, of course, I'm in Washington, D.C. And I know today the President spoke to the Divine Nine, some of their leadership. But you need to flip. We're free now. Flip that seal and let everybody see you got an African seal back there. What are we afraid of? Secret to life is to have no fear. He took away our ability to reconstruct ourselves by taking away our access to the knowledge that would allow us to build the consciousness that would create the ethical, moral, principled human being that could establish the economic, politics, and culture that can build societies that could replicate themselves based on truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. That's what we're really talking about. You know, because I'm satisfied if I was in a hut with no shoes and no shirt on, didn't cold up in there, I'd be fine. I can have food. I can teach my children to love one another. I can be in love with my mate and have my mate in love with me. That I can show that same love to the people who were not my blood immediately, because we all really have the same blood. It's like if you look at the Yorubas in Africa, which is the biggest ethnic nation in Africa, and you look at the Akans in Africa, which is one of the second or third, they're about 99.910% the same genetic structure. They're culturally different. They have different recent contemporary historical experiences, but genetically we're the same people. There's only one Africa. That's why Afro-descendants make sense. Put it under one label, one Africa. So I'll end with this. History will erase the mystery. To be shackled to your identity is the greatest freedom you will ever know. And part of the greatest crime that was committed against us, to cut the shackles that tied us to our identities and blot the history that restored our memories. So Brother Cyrus, Father, sir, thank you. Assalamu alaikum.